Hi there everyone, this is Alan. In this video we are going to see how to create 3 different ASP.NET Core MVC projects with different levels of difficulty and with different functionalities. In each project you'll learn something new, starting with a simple full-stack project by creating a food menu web app. Then we will create a Google Docs clone where we will integrate user authentication in our project. And lastly, we will build a web app to accept online payments. So let's get started. I will start with a brief explanation of the ASP.NET Core MVC structure, just so that you understand how our projects are structured. Firstly, we have models, which are C# classes, where we need to define properties. The models that we create represent a table in the database, and the properties are the columns of our tables. Then, the connection string is the link from the C# code to the physical database. It contains the address where the database is located and how to authenticate to the database service. We store the connection string in a file called appsettings.json. The context is a class that acts as a middleman. It has C# methods that you can call to ask the database to do something useful, like add a record or return all the rows in a table. We use these methods and interact with the context in a file called controller, where we handle the user requests. The context itself relies on the connection string in appsettings.json to physically locate the database file, and it also makes changes to the database tables by connecting the models with the database. The database itself is the place where all the tables are stored, which contain all the data of the application that you want to store in them. There are then the view pages, where we write all the front-end side of the application, or in other words, what is displayed in the browser when we run the application. The view pages interact with the context in order to paste the data from the database into the pages, and afterwards they display everything that is written in them to the browser. In this first project, we will create the food menu web application. The main purpose of it is to store data in the database and to be able to display them dynamically in the application. So let's first create a new project. We will select the MVC template and let's give it a name like menu. Just leave this all by default. Okay, to begin with, let's go to the package manager and let's install the 2 or 3 things that we need for every project that we make. So the first thing is Entity Framework Core. Then we need the Entity Framework Core tools. And we need something from the SQL server. There are some commands here that we use to migrate our data to the database. So as you can see, we have these 3 things installed. Now we are ready to go. Let's go to the models and create a model first. Okay, so adding a class. I'm going to be naming this like menu. Okay, first we need to create some properties here. The first one is the int ID. We need the name. So we're going to be needing an image URL for the URL of the foods in the menu in order to put a picture there. And we need a double variable property for the price. Okay, let's add the new class now for the ingredients of the foods in the menu. We need an int property, int ID property, and a name for the ingredient. Okay, so it would make more sense to rename this. So to put a name like dishes or something rather than menu. And then we're going to be creating another model in order to connect the dish with the ingredient. Because one dish can have multiple ingredients and one ingredient could be part of many dishes. So like we'll name this like this helper model dish ingredient. We need an ID for the dish, a dish ID. Of course, the property of type dish will name this dish. The same thing goes for the ingredient model, so an ingredient ID. And then down below, an ingredient property. So now we need to go to both the dish and ingredient models and connect them to the dish ingredient helper model. So we need the list of dish ingredients. I've renamed this. I had a typing error there. We'll name this dish ingredients. And this had to be a list. We'll make this nullable. And we can just copy this down and paste it in the ingredient model as well. Okay, so now we need to add a folder for the context. Firstly, we usually store the context in a data folder. So let's just create one. And we can then add a context class in it. You can name this something like menu context or something. So firstly, we need a menu context constructor. the menu context class has to inherit the DB context right there. And okay, so the constructor takes a DB context argument there. Let's just import a few things here firstly. So this here was DB context options. So everything that I'm writing here is just by default what we need in every context. So really don't need to learn it. Next, we need a non-model creating method here. So we see this was created itself. And firstly, we need to specify here the relation between the dish model and the ingredient model. So we need to specify here basically that they are both many-to-many. They both have a many-to-many relationship with each other. So firstly, we need to specify the keys that we have written in the dish ingredient helper model. So the first one was the dish ID, which connected the model to the dish model, and then the ingredient ID. So then we need to specify the relationship of the dish and the ingredient with the dish ingredient model. So firstly, we write here for the dish model. So basically what we are doing here is that we are saying that the one dish is connected to many dish ingredients, and we specify the foreign key, which is the dish ID. We're gonna copy this down and do the exact same thing for the ingredient model. We just need to change a few things here. So one ingredient is connected to many dish ingredients, and we specify the foreign key also. So we need to create two DB set instances for each model that we created. So one for the dish model, and we'll name dishes. One for the ingredient model, we'll name it ingredients. And one more for the dish ingredient. Okay, so what's left for us to do now is we have created successfully the models, but we need to add some data in it. And to add firstly some data in order to create just one dish item in our application. So we're writing here that the dish has some data. So we're giving it an ID of 1. And we'll name it something like, I don't know, for this video I'm just going to make it the menu out of pizzas. So like margherita. I'm setting the price to 7.50. And for the image URL, we can just go to Google. So just pick a photo and we'll copy the, okay, this one's fine. We'll copy the image address there and we'll paste it here. It's this long string here. And then we can add some ingredients to it, to the database. So the first ingredient, we'll give it an ID of 1 and a name of something like tomato sauce or something. We can copy this and we'll make another one that we need for the margherita pizza. So we'll change the ID to 2 and we'll name it like mozzarella or something. So these are the 2 things that make a margherita pizza. And the last thing is we should connect the first model, the margherita pizza, with the 2 ingredients, with the ingredients model. So in the dish ingredient model, we are basically just going to specify the ID of the dish model and the ID of the ingredient model. So a new ingredient. The dish ID was 1 and the ingredient ID, so the first ingredient had the ID of 1. And we can do the same thing for the second ingredient. Okay, so dish ID 1, ingredient ID 2. And I think everything is set for the database. Everything looks okay. Just looking if I forgot something, but okay, so now we need to connect the project to the database. To the SQL Server database, we'll just go there to Server Explorer and create a new SQL database. We need the server name firstly, so let's just open up SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, so here's the server name, and I'm just copying it down and pasting it here. Then we just need to give a name to the database. Menu database or something. The database was created, and here in the property window here, we need to copy down the connection string and then go to app settings.json. We need to create a connection string. So firstly, connection strings equals, so we'll give it a name to the connection string. I usually make it this like default connection string, but it doesn't matter. And then we just paste down here the connection string that we copied. We need just to add the encryption of false because we're not authenticating with the database with a password or something. The last thing is we'll need to go to program.cs and we'll need to add a service here. And I have this copied down somewhere. It's a long line, but basically we just need to, basically what we do here is just put the context name there and we put the connection string name also in the name, so the default connection string name. And basically what we're doing is just connecting the context with the connection string so it can connect them to the database. We just need to import here the data because the context there was not known. Let's first run the project, and then we need to add the migrations. So we need to give it a name like initial migration or something. So we hit enter and the migration was created. We just need to update the database so the changes can be saved. Okay, I forgotten the syntax there was wrong. I needed a dash. When I entered this encrypt in the connection string, this shouldn't be a colon, it should be an equal sign actually. Just changed it there. Just update the database one more time. Okay, so now we just need to add the controller. I'll just name it something like, usually the controller has the name of the module, but I'll name it menu as the name of the application. I'm just importing a few things. So the data folder in order to connect to the context and the modules as well we need there. So we just have firstly an index function there. So let's just go to the views. So we're making a folder called menu, and inside it we can add a view page. We'll just leave it as that index. So at the top we're importing a list, the list of the model, of the dish model. So menu dot models that dish. Here we can name the view data title, so the title of the tab to be like index. Or menu index. So firstly, let's add a div with the class of container for some paddings and margins. Inside, we need to make another div with the class row so that we can input the elements in a row. And now we need a for each loop to loop through the elements in the list that we are importing. So we'll just make it var item in model. And here we can just start inputting the data that we want to show in it. So firstly, we'll make another div with the class of column6, which basically in Bootstrap means that whenever we input a div in a row and we give it the column 6, so it takes 6 out of 12 imaginary columns in a Bootstrap row. So this div will take just half of the row. And then we can input the item name, the item's image, URL, and the price. Okay, let's make it a header for the name, so it's a little bit bigger and in bold. You can just run the project firstly to see what we are doing. Okay, so we forgot to make the index function. So here the view has to return a model. So, okay, and firstly we need to import the context there. We need a variable firstly for the context, the menu context. We'll just name it index context, and then we need we need a constructor for the context, and there we give it the context variable will give it the context. Okay, so this is a async await function, so we need to change a little bit the name of the function, so async task. And then in the view, we can await the context that dishes. And to list async method basically just lists all the elements in the context. Okay, so this has to work now. We need to see it in the index page. We need to see our data now. Okay, so it works, but we have made we need to make some changes here. So firstly, the image URL has to be inside an image tag in the source attribute inside it. So inside the style attribute, we need to specify the width of the image. I'll just make it like 75% or 70%. And we can add a class to each div element in order to place them in the center of their div. So if you can open up the Bootstrap documentation for the placing of the elements, we need to first make the div flex, so like a flex box, and we can then write justify content center. So this basically just makes the divs a flex box and then puts the element in the center of the main div. And we can copy this down to each div that we have here. And we could format the price a little bit, so it takes two string and two, which basically means two places after the comma. And just run the projects one more time and see if all this data looks better. Okay, so this looks fine. It had to take half of the row and it's in the center of it, so this looks okay, but we need also to add some. So now for each item, we need to add a details page. So we can just go to the controller one more time and we can add a details function there. This is also going to be an async await function, so the details function here takes an int ID. And we will just have a variable called it something, a dish, and we'll take we'll loop through the context of dishes for the element with the ID of the model that we have in the argument. So this is pretty much the syntax to do it. So the element.id in the database has to have the ID of the element in the argument. So now in the details page, we also need to include there the ingredients. So in the index page, we didn't need to show all the data, so we didn't show the ingredients of the dish. But now when you open up the details page, we need to include there the ingredients. So firstly, we'll just write include the dish ingredient. And then also include the ingredient. So we are specifying here the connection of the dish with the dish ingredients helper model and then with the ingredient model. Then we can just return the view. It's good also to have an if clause here in case the dish is null. And just return a not found page. So now we need to go to the view pages and we need to add a details view page. We'll name it details. So now here on top, we need to import just a model, not a list of models, because it's just one singular model that we have in the details page. So model menu dot models dot dish. We can put a title of the tab here in the view data variable. Of course, we need a container div to give it some stylings. Then we need just to put each element in the center also. So we don't need the column div because we just have one singular element. So firstly, the title of the model. And here the syntax is a little bit different. So we just put model.name. So different to the case when we have a list of models imported. So and just go to the index view page and just copy something down because these are pretty much the same. So we need to change here also model.image URL. Okay, let's just set the width to 50% because it's a whole row here. It's just one item. And down here also. So here we need to add the ingredients, which we did not have in the index page. So we'll just make a list here. make the for each loop to loop through each item's ingredient. So item in model.dish ingredient, I think. Dish ingredients. And here we can make some ordered lists, some lists. Just input item dot ingredient dot name. So this has to work, seems fine. We got to add a button here in the index page so that the user can go to the details page then. So you just need to add another div. And inside of it, we need to input an anchor tag. So we can specify the action, just pretty much the name of the function in the controller. And we need to specify the route ID or the ID that the function details takes. So this is item.id. And just some styling, we'll add a class of button, and button info is the color. It's like a light blue color. Okay, the button is too small because we didn't input any name in the button. So inside the anchor tags, we can write view dish. So this looks fine. And here we have the details page, which needs some styling. The ingredients should be listed as a list. So I've written down, it should be a list, not li, not il there. And we can add here another button in order so the user can redirect to the index page. Just add an anchor tag with a class of button and button info. And the action is index. It doesn't take any parameter, any argument, so. And the name of the button back to the menu. So the list should be ordered now. Should be presented as a regular list. Okay, so it looks better. And we have the button to go back to the menu. So this is great, but we can add some more data to our application, and the easiest way to do it, instead of going to the context, is to open the database in the SQL Management Studio and to open each model. So it would take a lot of time if we did this in the context by adding the data to the models there. So we can just open the tables from the SQL Server Studio. Okay, and so we can write this manually here. We can write the names. I'm just adding a couple more dishes here. So we're gonna write the names here. I'm just making a pepperoni, because I'm doing this. Yeah, I'm doing it with pizzas only. So just give the price. And we have to find an image of a pepperoni pizza. Let's see. I'm just taking this one. So copy image address. and we input here the URL. Okay, let's just hit enter here. Okay, so let's just add another one, like vegetarian. Just find an image for it. Okay, so let's input here the URL and just put a price in it. Like 9. So just hit enter. It is saved. So I'm leaving it with this. Let's just go now to the ingredients table. So edit top 200 rows. No, this is the dish ingredients table. Let's just go first to the ingredients table to add some ingredients for the two pizzas that we made. We can just make like pepperoni, a couple of veggies would be okay. Like paprika and mushrooms. Okay, I'm just leaving it with that. So now just need to go to the dish ingredients to connect this to each other. So to connect the second dish with the third ingredient, which was pepperoni. Wait, it needs to be connected to the first and second actually, but yeah, just connect them to the first ones, which was, I think, sauce and mozzarella. Yes. Okay, so let's just connect the third one to the paprika and mushrooms ingredient. So just run the project. Okay, you can see the data is displayed dynamically here. So we have the two pizzas, which all have the details pages created. We can see in the URL above that the index is displayed there. So another thing that we can do here is just to edit a little bit the layout page. So let's just remove the home and privacy navigation items. And what we can add here, we can add a search bar button to filter through the data. And I've handled this in the previous video, how to add a search bar, but in this one, I'm just going to style it a little bit better so it looks nicer. So inside the navigation item here, we just need to add a form. The action needs to be redirected to the controller named to the index, not to the menu controller. And yes, the action is index. And the method when we filter data was get. So right now here, just need to add an input firstly. Okay, so just one tag. So I'll add some styling to it to make it a little bit different from the previous video. So I'll give the width of 80%, and the submit button that is going to be an icon. We'll make it like 20%. So we'll float this to the left side, which basically means that the input and the button then will be both floated to the left side, so they are in one single line. And the border radius will just give a corner to the we'll just make it a corner to the top left search bar. We'll just make it a little bit around it, and I'll say like 20 pixels. And to the bottom left radius. So here we're just making it a little bit around it on the sides. I'll make the background transparent. This was it for the styling. Now just the type of the input has to be text. We need a name for the input, so we can take it and handle it in the controller then. So a name search string. And a styling of, what you can edit of, we'll make it as a form control, which looks better. So we'll give it the class of it. So this was it for the input. Now for the button, in this time I'm going to store an icon in it. So I'm going to CDN awesome, font awesome. This is just a website where, okay, first we need to import its library, and they have some nice icons there. So just firstly, we need to import the library here in the header, in the layout page. Just copy paste it there. And then down here, when we make a button, we can add an icon in the middle of, inside the button text, we can add the icon. So firstly, just for the styling, we'll make this 20%, and we'll float this to the left as well. So both the input and the button are in one single line. So I don't want any border for it, so it looks a little bit nicer. I'll give the background of transparent as well. I'll give the height of 40 pixels. This was it for the styling, and the type of the button has to be submit. And inside the button now, here's the icon that we can import from the Font Awesome website, which have some nice icons there. So we just need to add an icon and have a class, the search, for this search icon. So this is the website where we can go, fontawesome.com icons. So here you can go and find any icon that you want, and you can import the icons. Mine, I searched for before, and it has a class of FA search. I'm just gonna save the project firstly to just see what I'm doing here. Okay, so you can see this nice search bar here. We can see the search icon there. It just needs to be a little bit more in the middle. So in the list above, we can add the styling margin of auto, which basically means that it's equally distance from the left side and from the right side. So this has to be now in the middle. In the middle of the page, so this looks very good, I think. As a search bar, this is actually pretty nice. We just need to handle now the functionality of the search bar, which I said that we previously did that in a previous video, but I'm just showing it here also. So we'll just go to the controller, to the index. So in this variable, we'll just make a link query.
So we're just looping through the context. So the information in the database, we're looping through the context of dishes. This is just the syntax that you usually do it, and we need an argument, the search string, which was the name of the input in the form that we had. And now we can make an if clause if the search string is not null or empty. Okay, so we'll take the dish variable here, and or the dishes, it sounds better. We'll just make this lambda expression that you usually do in this case to find specific data in the database. So we're searching by the name of the dish. Here we can return the view, we can substitute here the context.dishes with the dishes, and we can copy this and paste it down here also. So in case the search string is not null, it goes to the view in the if clause. Okay, the functionality should work fine now. We can just try it here when this loads. So just write pepperoni, or just pep, and it shows down here.
In this second project, we are going to make an online text editor, kind of like Google Docs, where you can create an account and then create your documents, edit and format them, and then you can print those documents. So even if you log into a different device, you can access your documents, modify them, or print them. We are going to import a library from an online text editor in order to get all the commands that we need to format our text. So let's just begin.
So let's just create firstly an empty project. Let's just select an MVC template. And let's just give it a name like text editor. Click on next, and in the authentication type, we select individual accounts. Now let's just wait for the project to load. The first thing we want to do is to create a model. We're adding a class in the models folder, and we will name it doc or document for the documents that we will create in this application. So firstly, we will need an int ID property. We'll need a title of type string. Next, we'll also need a property for the content of the document. And the last thing that we need to connect our documents to a user. So firstly, we'll need the user ID property. And the next, we need to specify the foreign key. So the foreign key is the user ID. And this user ID is connected to our identity user model that is created when we firstly created the project, when we typed authentication type to be as individual accounts. And now we can just make these two properties nullable. And we can write on top of the user ID property, we can write there we can put it as required so that a document cannot exist without its user. So if it happens for us to delete the user, this makes the documents of the user to be deleted as well. Now we just need to go to the context, and there we need to specify the dbset instance for the model that we created. We will name it docs, and we need to import the models on top of the page. So let's go to program.cs, and here we can see the services that were injected when we created the project. So we can see here that the context is connected to the connection string, and we also see here that we have the service for the identity users, which we need to specify here the confirmed account, require confirmed account to false, so that when we register a user with an account, we don't need a confirmation for that account. It will just be created. Now we are just going to create the database for our project. Let me open the SQL Server Studio. Okay, so here I need to copy the server name here. I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm just putting a name for our database, which I'll just make it text editor data. So we have created a database in the SQL Server Studio. And here in the window below, we can copy the connection string. Let's just go to appsettings.json, the default connection string that was put here when we created the project. Let's just substitute it here. And I'm also going to need to specify the encrypt to false here, because when we connect to the database, we don't have a password for the database or some kind of encryption. And all that is left to do right now is just adding the migrations to the database. So I'm going to Package Manager console. And down here, just add migration and a name for the migration. Build succeeded. Now we just need to update the database as usual. Okay, everything seems okay. I'm just gonna go to the controllers, and I'm gonna add the one controller we need for this project. I'm making it with views, so there will be views auto-generated, and the CRUD operations as well. I'm gonna just specify here the model class and the context. The name, I'm gonna leave it as docs controller. So our controller is created with the actions or the methods. We actually are not going to need the details action here and the view page as well, because just like in Google Docs, for example, when you click on a document, you go to an edit link. So you just go to a link, being able to edit it. Okay, we're not going to need this line here in the edit method. So what I'm going to do here in the edit and in the delete method, I'm going to make it so only the user that has created the document can be able to edit or delete it. So this is something we've seen in the previous tutorials as well. So if we write this line here, so if the document.userid is not equal to the to the user that is currently logged in the application, then we're gonna return a not found page. So user.find first value, and in brackets we're gonna specify the claim types that name identifier, which just basically just gets the username, the user ID for the user that is currently logged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in the delete method as well, so that only the users that create the document can be able to delete it or to edit it. Because if we leave it by default just like that, if the user has the link, it can go and edit or delete somebody else's document. So I'm just running the project firstly just to see what we've got there, and so that I can just register a user firstly so that I can start working, because I'm going to need to connect each document that we create with a specific user. So I'm just going to register a user here. I usually use the Sean email. I don't know why. And just giving it a password here. Below as well. And so we are logged in as Sean here. Let me just go to the docs link, which takes us to the controller, to the index view of the controller. And now let's just keep working with the method. Okay, so firstly I'm just going to put the authorized tag on top of the class, so that I'm going to need to import here the authorization on top of the page. And so this just makes it so only the users that are authenticated can access this controller. And let me just start with the create method. Firstly, I don't need this line here. So I'll start with the create method. I'm just going to go to the create view page next, because this is okay. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to delete a few labels because I think it looks better on the page. And if you also know Google Docs, for example, you just don't have a label for the content or for the text, you just have a place to put them. I'm just giving the title a value of untitled document, which basically just, so when you don't put a name to your document, it just print it as untitled document. Removing the label down here. And actually to get the user, we just need an input firstly of type hidden, so the user don't see the user ID. The tag here has to be user ID. And the way we can get the user ID of the current logged in user, we just need to import the ASP.NET identity on top of the page. So Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.identity. And we also need to inject here the user manager. We've seen this before in the previous videos. It takes an identity user as a parameter. And then I'm just giving it a name here. So I'm just taking the user that is currently logged in the application and doing it by typing user manager that get user ID of the current user. And what we're going to do now here, we're going to just fix the input. The input is going to be a text area actually. So for the content of the document, we're going to need the text area tag with the ASP4 attribute as content to connect it to the content. And now we're going to need to open up Google. We're going to find an online text editor online, which this one that I'm taking here is TinyMCE, which allows you to import the application. So I'm copying these tags here. What this basically allows you to have some way in your text area to edit your text. I'm going to the layout page to put them in the head tags. And here we can see here the no API key that we have here, which basically is just like a free way to use this library, but we could also register in the application and take an API key. Here, this application has this page that we visited has various packages for different things, for different plans, and here just making a dot here to separate these lines. And as we can see, there are different plugins to this library. Here in the text area, we just need to write the ID of Tiny. And if we try to view the Create page now in the browser, we will see that in our text area, there will be some comments that allow us to edit our text, just like in a Word or in Google Docs. As you can see, we have we have this warning here because as we can see in the page of this TinyMCE, there are different plans here. We could sign up for a free plan and take the API key, but I'm just not doing it so that the tutorial don't take long. Different websites have different kind of plans. So in the styling, I'm gonna make the width to be a bit bigger. I'm gonna make it like 60 of the view width, and the height to be like 80 of the view height. What I could do here is I could also put a link for our delete button. You just need to specify the action to be the delete, the text here to be delete or something. And we need to specify the ASP route ID for the ID of the modal that we want to delete, which is going to be the @modal.id. And I'm just giving it a class of button and button danger to make it like a red button, which what usually the delete buttons look like. I'm just giving it a margin of 2. And down in the back to list link, I'm going to give it a class to look like a button and button info, which is a light blue color. I'm just running the application to see how this looks like. Okay, I've got an error here because we have no modal created yet, no document, and it cannot take us to the route that we specified for the delete button. So I'm just going to need to comment this out for the moment. And if I run the application, we should see our other changes that we did. So as we can see, we have the section for the content is a bit bigger. I could give here this button also a bit of the margin on top, set it to 30. And I'm just going to delete these headers here both because I think it looks better without them. So in the docs controller now, we can just, I'm going to see the post method for the create. It looks good. I just don't need here this. Okay, I'm just going to the edit now, to the edit view page. I'm deleting these headers on top. Okay, I'm deleting a few labels as well. So the content has to be a text area. So this is similar to the one that we had in our create page. So I just copied that. So I'm going to need to fix the way we take the user ID as well. So this got to be an input tag of type hidden so that we don't see the user ID. And this will be connected to the user ID. Okay, I can change the back to list anchor here as well. Making it like a light blue color with a bit of margin on top. Let me run the application. Actually, I need to create firstly a document so that we can see what we do in our edit page. Just something about technology, I don't know. Just an example. So I'm copying this down. I'm pasting it here. I'm going to delete this warning that appears often here. I'm just going to make a bit of changes to the text so that we can see that the exact changes that we make are saved then later. Okay, I'm just making them. I don't know, you can play around with the tools you have here. It's just like Word. I can make the font larger. So we just have different things here, different menus that we can work with. Okay, so we haven't actually fixed the index field, but I'm going to do it later. You can just go to the edit link with the ID of 1. Okay, as we can see, so the text is just the way we created it with our modifications that we did to it. Okay, so actually we could change a few things. So this delete link that I had before here, it wouldn't make sense to put it in a create page. And of course you can put it in an edit page, but I don't know why I put it there before. So I'm just pasting it here, uncomment this, and this route now can be accessible. You can just run this. I'm just gonna put these two inputs, these two buttons inside the form group so they are aligned better. I'm giving it a margin to the left so they are in the same line. So we fixed the create and the edit view and methods. Now we're gonna need to fix the index view. I'm just gonna delete this whole table thing. I'm gonna create a big button to create a blank document. So I'm putting this inside a div firstly, this anchor. So inside the anchor, I'm gonna put a plus sign. So I'm gonna make the div flex box. I'm making the content to be centered horizontally and vertically with these two bootstrap classes. So the line items makes it centered in the vertical direction. As for the styling, I'm gonna put the width to something like 150 pixels and the height to 200 pixels. So I'm giving it a background color of like light gray. And for the font size of the plus sign that I'm gonna make later, I'm giving it a size of 100 pixels. And here in this anchor tag, I'm gonna write the plus sign. And because the anchors are usually blue and underlined, I'm just gonna set here the text decoration to none so that it won't be underlined. And I'm just gonna need to specify the color so that the anchor is not blue, which is by default blue. It is by default blue. Let me just run this firstly, and we should just be able to see a button to have a blank document. So that's what I wanted to see. So if we click on it, we can go to the create page. As you can see now. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a span below it so it says the name. So like blank document, and when we will create our own documents, we'll display there the title of the document. So just like blank document. And I'm putting there, I'm making it bold. So in the stylings, I'm just making the font weight to bold. Okay, now I'm gonna need, okay, so I firstly just write an HR tag. So it's just a big underline. So it separates the create new document to the other documents. So I'm gonna need a loop here, a for each loop for each var item in the modal. So this loops through each document model that we store in the database. And for each document, firstly, I'm just copying what we did here above for a bit of structure. And of course, I'm gonna change a few things. So the color, I'm gonna make it like light blue. And the action is gonna be edit, and the ASP route ID is gonna be the ID of that model, of that document. So at item.id. And inside here, I'm just going to need to add I think to add a text emoji, which I'm going to find in the internet. So just like a paper emoji or something. So let's just see this one. I'll try to copy this. It looks okay, actually. Then putting it here, I'll put it here. Okay, I need to add a span for the title of the document. So I'm gonna make the style to the font weight to bold as well. And I'm gonna take then the document's title. This is basically just like, in Word, when you have Word documents in your desktop, you see the Word logo and just the title of your document. That's just the idea of it. Okay, so, and then I'm gonna need to make all of this in a column, in a div, in a class with a column class, and I'm gonna set it to 2. So this is a bootstrap class that takes 2 out of 12 imaginary bootstrap lines. So in a line, we're gonna be able to fit 6 different objects, and outside the loop, I'm gonna put this column class divs inside the row class div. So basically each row is gonna take 6 documents. Okay, if we reload this, we're gonna be able to see just one because we created only one document. That's what we actually did before. So this works now. And as I said, a line could take up to 6 documents. Let me just create a new one. I'll name it something else. ASP.NET, I don't know. Code, the future. Okay, so I'm out of ideas. I'm just typing something, whatever, so that we can see how the next document will be showed. And there we can see the title of the document and the same image for the icon. When we click on it, we see our document just the way we edited it with our comments to edit. Okay, so if we go to program.cs, I'm just going to change the default controller to the documents controller, to the docs controller. So each time we run the application, we go directly to the docs controller. Here in the layout, I'm just going to delete that privacy tab. And I could just specify here the home tab to be connected to the documents controller. So I can connect the text editor icon of the application to the docs controller and the home tab. So now what is else left for us to do is that we can change the index method so it only loads up the documents that each user makes. So if I log in as a user, I'm going to see only my documents. And if another user logs into the application, he will see nothing if he has created nothing. Or it's the documents that the user has created. I'm just changing these lines a bit here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to loop through with this. I'm going to loop through the context.docs with this link query lines that we have talked before. So this just loops through the context of documents in the database. And then in this variable that we had above, we're gonna specify, so we're gonna take only the documents that are of a specific user. So that where. So here we will take the documents that their user ID is equal to the ID of the user that is currently logged into the application. So with this line, user.find first value of the claim types dot name identifier. Here we are just taking the ID of the currently logged in user, and we will just take the documents that are of that specific user. So I'm running here the application, and we should not see any changes to the index method. But how are we going to be able to see the changes is if we create a new user now. We can register, we'll log out first. We can register with another user firstly. Just like a name, I don't know, Billy. And when we firstly log in the application, we will see nothing. We will see only the option to create a new blank document. And then if we create another document, we will see only the documents that are created by Billy. So I'm just going to try to create a new document here. And this could be a useful application because if you log in the application from different computers, you could be able to see your documents that you have worked on and also download them, which we will see a bit later. As we can see, we have here the document that we created by Billy. And I think I'm just going to try and test the delete button here because I forgot to do until now. So I'm just going to change a bit the user interface because it's a little messed up. So I don't need the user ID to be displayed. And as for the content, I could display it again in a text area tag. I'll just copy this from the edit view page. And I think that's okay. I'm gonna try to fix a lot of things here. It doesn't really matter. You can just play around with it. So, okay, so we see exactly the content of the document that we will delete. And if we try to delete it, it will be gone. Okay, so I'm just going to log into the Sean account one more time. We had the two documents that we saw before. And what I'm going to show you now is what I was talking about before. So we have an option in our commands to modify the text that we input here. So we have an option under Files, Print, and we can actually print our documents. This could be a real application, so just like the Google Docs, you can, okay, I'm just putting here a file name. You can just open up the application from different computers and you can print out your files there. So I'm just going to see, okay, we have here the Sean document was printed as a PDF. And here we see what we wrote before. So this was it for this video. This was how you could create an online text editor in ASP.NET Core. In this third project,
we're gonna see how we can use Stripe to accept payments in our ASP.NET Core project. All we're gonna need is a Stripe account, and we will see from the documentation all the steps we need to take to integrate Stripe in our project, which is pretty simple, by the way. Next, we'll create a small e-commerce application by creating a few products in our Stripe account and in our database as well, and we'll implement this payment functionality to the application. It is really not that complicated, so just make sure to keep on watching. So the first thing we want to do is go to stripe.com. Just enter that on Google. Here we are on stripe.com. What we will do now is actually you will have, I'm logged in here. You just need to, you'll see an option to sign up. It's a pretty straightforward process, but since I'm logged in, I can see this dashboard here. I'm just going there. Okay, so I'm logged in with my Stripe account. And what we're gonna need here is we need this secret key here. I'm just gonna go and find my API key. And here we have our publishable key and our secret key. The secret key is actually the one that we're gonna need to, so that we can make the request to the Stripe for the checkout session. And what we're also gonna need from this from our Stripe account, we're gonna need to go to our products. Let's see our product catalog, all products, and here's where we actually specify each product that we want to have in our e-commerce application. So basically each product you will have to create here, and then when the user wants to pay for it, we make a request to our Stripe so that the price of the product will be specified here. This is actually a more secure way to do it, and so that the user so that the price is not, so to say, written in the client side. That's actually the recommended way of doing it. Here I have two products that I have created here actually. So just this Jordan t-shirt here. We see here the name, the description, and this is the API ID or the price ID that we will actually use to create the checkout session. Actually, I've given a price here like $25, and actually I'm gonna create another product so that you see how we do it. So just add a product here. Okay, I don't know, what can I have, like a watch, I don't know, something. Okay, so I'm leaving it here. I'm actually gonna need to download this image to my computer. So save as, here, Armani watch. Okay, it's here. Okay, let's go back to the product catalog, like Armani watch, description, man watch 2023, and I'm gonna upload the image here, this here, wait for it to download. I'm giving here the password of my account. Okay, it's downloaded, and we're gonna make the price to be paid for this watch one-off, and the amount to be paid for it, let's set it to, I don't know how much it costs, like 150. Let's make it dollars, and add product. And as we can see, our product was also here created. And what we're gonna need to do now is, let's just go to Stripe docs, Stripe documentation, and here let me just go to payments. Here we'll actually get the code to create our payment, to accept online payments. Let's just click here, and Stripe basically just gives us all the documentation we need. Basically, it's a very simple process. Here we have a server.cs class with basically the main method here is this one, this create method here, and we have also 3 HTML HTML files for the checkout and one for the success when the payment is successful, and the other one when the payment is not successful. So what we're going to do now is just go to how I'm going to do it is I'm going to create a new project in Visual Studio. Let me just search for MVC. Okay, ASP.NET Core. Where is MVC? Here. And I'll give a name to the project, like Stripe Web App. Click on Next. I'm leaving it everything as it is. Just waiting for the project to load. And the first thing I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to go to app-settings.json, where I'm going to store firstly our secret key, our API key in our Stripe account. So let me just go to just right here, Stripe. Then secret key, that's the key we're gonna need actually. Just inside parentheses, inside double quotation marks. Here we'll just input our secret key. Let me just go to our Stripe account here. I don't know where they were. API keys. Okay, this is the key we're gonna use. Okay, just click on it to copy it. I'm just going to the project once again, and I'm pasting it here. That should be fine. Okay, now I'm just gonna go to program.cs to actually store it, to access it. And we can see it here also in the documentation somewhere, actually, in the server class. This is actually the way to specify our secret key, but we're also actually gonna access it via our app-settings.json, because that's the more secure way to do it, to access these kind of secret keys. And actually here, because my account is actually logged in with my Stripe account, this is actually the actual key that I'm gonna need, because Stripe basically has connected my API key with this documentation here. Anyways, I'm just going to the project once again. Let me just, where was it written here? Just written before user outing, so I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna write it here, basically. So here, Stripe configuration.api key, and here we'll actually access it from the app-settings.json file. So we'll write builder.configuration.get section. Here from Stripe, get this secret key. Here we just need to write get string, and that is it. That's how we access our API key. And actually here we have an error because we need to actually install stripe.net inside our dependencies. So just go here to manage NuGet packages. And just right here, stripe.net, and install it. Okay, so it's installed already. If we go back here, let me just click on it again. And we'll just write here using Stripe on top, and everything is okay now. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna actually create a controller, add controller, an empty controller, and I'll just name it payment controller. Okay, so here firstly we have an index view page, and this is actually where we'll store the checkout.html page that we saw in the documentation. But firstly, let me just create a folder here for the payment controller. I'm naming it payment, and here I'm going to add a view page, an index view page. I'm leaving the name as it is. And actually, I'm going to delete this here, and what I'm going to store there is what we have in our checkout.html page. So basically this here. So basically here's the code where we have just a product there and the option to go to the checkout page, and the form here just redirects us to the method that we will store in the controller actually. So let's just go back to the controller. So that we have it, I just create this success.html page and the cancel.html page. The success.html page is the page where we will be redirected after the payment was successful, and the cancel.html page is the opposite, the page where we'll be redirected if the payment doesn't go through. So I'm just writing those now so that we'll get them out of our way. So I'm just having two other methods like this, just naming them success and cancel. Actually, I'm just adding two more view pages here. The cancel. So in the success page, I copied the code actually. No, I didn't copy it. Just click on it to copy it. Here's the success page. Basically, we appreciate your business. If you have any questions, please email. And there's like a default email there. And in the cancel.html, I'm just copying this here. So forgot to add something to your cart, shop around, and come back to pay or something. Okay, checkout cancelled. And yes, what we'll do now is go to our payment controller, and we will actually write the most important part of the project, the method that we actually have here. Yeah, just this post method, create method here, where it's basically all of the most important part of the code. I'm just copying this here. Just storing it here after the index method. So we have a post method, create checkout session. I'm just changing the name, and here what we do here is we specify domain. The domain here actually may be false. Let me just see what our domain is. Okay, so this is actually our domain. So I'm just copying this and then pasting it here. Just like that. And then, well, here we actually see that let me just make it a bit bigger. So here we actually are specifying some session create options, which basically are the options that will pass to our checkout session that we'll create. And here inside of it, we actually specifying these line items. Basically, these line items are the products that the customer will actually pay. Here we see the price, we specify the price of it and actually the quantity of the products. And down below, the mode is set to payment, which basically means a one-time payment. We could do actually also subscriptions. in Stripe, and we have here the success URL specified and the cancel URL. So basically here I'm just gonna need to actually access this in our project, this success.html page. Let me just see the route. Okay, so this is actually the route. So after the domain name, you just need to write payment and success, okay. Payment/success, and the same thing goes for the cancel page. And yeah, basically this is it. And yeah, here above we see here that this is the place where we give the price ID. The price ID is what we had here when we created our products. Then just go back to the products. So all these products had like a price ID here, and this is actually the place where we specify it. So let me just go back. If we copy this, it's the place where we specify the price of the product. That's actually the recommended way Stripe payments are done. And if we go back to the documentation, actually, if we had the option here to define the product to sell, and we choose, here we see all our products that we have, since this Stripe documentation page is connected to our account. If we right here, click here on the Armani watch, we see the price is taken automatically, actually. And yeah, just go back here. We can actually do it as an example. Just put the price there manually. And where we left it, here below, the session service was created and the options that we created above were passed to it. And then here is basically just the page will be redirected to the session.url, to another page. And here's the status code of 303, which is basically just the redirection status, HTTP status code. And actually, let me just, so that we test this out as it is, we just go back to our index page, and here we actually need to change the action. The action was create session, create checkout, I think I named it, create checkout. Let me use this ASP action tags, and let us just run the project just for us to see it. Okay, so here, this is our index page. This is what we had in our documentation. Basically, this, we have an image, like a title, the price, and actually the checkout will redirect us to the checkout page for our Armani watch, actually for the product that we created, but this is just visually, just for now. If I click on checkout here, will be redirected to the Stripe checkout page. Here we see the product that we have, since the checkout session took our price ID. We have the title of it, the price, the photo, everything. And let me just make an example here. We can use like an email address, like whatever. Here in the card information, we'll use a test card, which is like 4242. You can find this in the documentation as well. Just only 4 twos. And we just give a date here, some date in the future, just one, a code, just the numbers here, the name of the card holder here, just the country and all. Just complete this, and if you click on pay, the payment should be successful. We see this success page. We appreciate your business. If you have any question, please email orders@example.com. And basically what was done here, as I explained it before, just after we clicked on this checkout button here, we were redirected to our method here. The domain was specified, the options for the item that we wanted to buy, which were, here we saw that we specified the price ID and the quantity, we let it to 1. And basically this session, this checkout session was created with the options, and we were redirected to that checkout page. This was it. This is not basically too much complicated if you just follow each line, if you just read each line actually, and if you read the documentation, and if we can actually verify how that the payment went through. If we go to our Stripe, to our payments, to our Stripe account, to payments, we'll see all payments here. And actually we see here, this is the time, 1:23 p.m. The customer was James. This was the product that was bought, and we see this amount was successfully paid. So what we're gonna do right now is actually I'm gonna create some products, the products that we store here. I'm gonna create them I'm gonna store them in our database as well, so that we can make the page actually look more functional. So I'm just gonna store some products in the database, and I'm gonna display each one of those in our project, and then when the client wants to pay for something, we'll take that price ID, make the request to Stripe, and the payment will be accordingly. So let's just go back to our project here. I'm gonna actually need to create a model for our products or items, like add a class here. We can just name it products or items, like item. First I'm gonna need an ID for those, then a name for the product, for the item, public string, actually an image URL would be needed. So basically when the project loads, we'll store each of our products from the database to the first page, and then we'll pass here the product, the price ID as well, so that when, as I said, when a user clicks on it to buy it, we'll make the request to the Stripe with that price ID. String price ID. So this is our item model. Now I'm just gonna need to, as you know, we're gonna need to create a data folder to create a context, as we do in our MVC projects, like a data folder. And then a context, I'm adding a class here. I'm naming it like MVC context or something. This will actually need to inherit the DB context. And we'll see a problem here actually, because we'll need to install Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. Actually, I'm just going to go to dependencies, manage NuGet packages, and I'm going to also install some dependencies for us to make the migrations to the database. But firstly, so Entity Framework. This Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. This is installed. Now I'm using something else. We're gonna need something else. The Microsoft Entity Framework Core.tools. You can see here that we have some commands from it to add migrations and update the database, which we're gonna need after we create our model. So installing this as well. Accept. Okay, this is also installed. Now just write here SQL Server. The dependency we're gonna need as well, since we are storing the information in our SQL Server database. Okay, everything was installed. Let's go back to our context here. We should actually see that if we import something here using Entity Framework Core, this is now okay. Here I'm gonna need to write the constructor for our context as usual. And here we're gonna give it some parameters, db context, options, MVC context options. This is what we usually do when create our context in MVC applications. It's not that I remember this, actually you can find this in the documentation. This will also inherit some base options. This was it for the constructor, and down below we just also need to specify our dbset instances. So the instance for the model that we created. So an item, I'm naming it items, and I'm just going to need to import the models, I think, yes. On top of the page, that was it. For now, what I'm going to do now is just, we need to create a database for our project. Just go to View, Test Explorer, I think. No. Just go to View, Server Explorer. You're just going to need to create a new SQL Server database. We need the server name, so I'm just going to open up the SQL Server Management Studio to get that server name. Okay, so I'm just scoping this. Just give a name to the database. Stripe web app data. The name of our project. Just click on this to get the properties, to get the connection string. Just scoping this, and I'm going to app settings.json to store this connection string. Okay, so just write here connection strings. I'll give a name to the connection string. Usually what I do is just like write here default connection string, and then we'll pass here inside double quotation marks the address, so to say the name of the database, the connection string. Here I'm also going to need to set encryption to false, just because we don't need a password to access the database. And this should be basically it. Now, what's left to do now? We created the model, then we created that instance inside the context. We created the database and stored the connection string in app settings.json. Now we just need to go to program.cs and add one more service here, builder.services.add. So basically we're adding here a service for the context. So after the models instances were stored in the context, then the context just basically, so to say, connects it with the database, and here you write that properties of the database. So here we write the name of the context was MVC context. We need to use the .data folder for this to be known. Here I'm just passing it some options. That use SQL Server, and here we'll pass the address of the connection string. So to access the connection string, we write builder.configuration.get connection string. Inside here, the name of the connection string, which was default connection string. Okay, we're almost done now. What we're gonna need to do is just go to Tools and go to NuGet Package Manager, go to Package Manager console, so that we will add the model that we created to the database. So just basically add migration. So actually I'm just gonna need to cut this here and just paste it here, actually down below. That's where it should be. And I'm just going back to adding the migration. I'm giving it a name like initial migration. Okay, the migration was added. We just need now to update the database. Okay, everything was stored in the database that we created. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go to our database here and add some products there manually. Then we'll also just need to handle the way we display them. So just go to databases here. Name of our database was web app data. Go to tables. Here we'll just add it top to 100 rows. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is just go back to our products. Okay, so firstly for the watch, I'm just going to take the name, the description. I don't know if I need a description, so just the title there, the name, the image URL. We can just go back here and just copy image address, I think. Just store it here. And next, just copy this price ID, store this here as well. This is our first product. I'm actually gonna take the other one that I had there, this Jordan shirt. So just Jordan t-shirt. I'll take the price ID here. I don't know where I've taken it actually, the photo. So Jordan t-shirt. For the image URL, I'm actually gonna find another one since I don't know where I took it. T-shirt image. Probably one of these, I think. Seems similar. Scoping the image address, storing it here. Now the price ID as well. I'm just adding a third one. I don't know if I had the product here. I think I had the product here without an actual image actually, but yeah, I'm just taking that ID, summer t-shirt. You can just find an image for it as well. the price ID is what I'm also gonna need. So we have stored 3 products in our database. Now let me just go back to the project and we will just take them from the database. So we'll go to the controller actually firstly, and I'm gonna need to have we're gonna need to declare a constructor here to take that information from the context. So firstly I need a variable to store the context, so like a private read-only MVC context. I'll name it underline context as usual. We'll need to import this folder here that has the context. Here we'll declare the constructor. So basically we're taking the context inside this constructor and we're passing it to our variable. So now we need to access it here in our index page. So basically I'll make this an asynchronous method. So we'll write here async task. And here, when we return the view, we're actually gonna await the context. So await underline context dot items dot to list async. Just need to remove this underline here. Need to use Microsoft Entity Framework Core here on top of the page, and we'll have no errors anymore. So the last thing we're gonna do is go to the index.html. We're actually gonna remove everything that we had here by default. And here on top of the page, we're taking the item model. So add model enumerable name of the project dot models dot item. Here I'll have a container div. Give it some styling, some margins and padding. Then I'm gonna have another div with the class of a row. This is basically just some Bootstrap class styling with these classes, if you know Bootstrap. And then inside each row, I'm just taking a loop here, a for each loop. We're looping through each item in the model. I'll have another class of column. I'll have another div with the column class. And inside of it, we're also going to need another div where we'll store the form. So here we're storing basically each element, each item, and we'll make them to be centered, the title and the button, actually everything that's inside an item that an item has. So I'm using this div flex to make it a flex box. justify content center, and just give it a bit of styling, setting the position to relative. Actually, we'll specify the action method where ASP, with this ASP action tags where the form will be submitted. So to this CreateCheckout method, and the method will be post. So firstly, we have an input here of type hidden, name ID, and this will take the item that ID that we take from the model. This will be a single tag. Next, we want the image. So I'm taking an image tag. The name of it will be image URL, so that we can bind this in the method that we'll submit it to. This source here, we'll just write the image URL, item.image URL, and we'll also give it some styling, set the width to be 70%, so it's not too big. And this will actually also be a single tag. I will put the title inside an h6 tag. Name, actually the name of the, how we stored it, name, or, okay, it's the name, not title. Name will be name with a big N. And about the styling, let's give it a position of absolute. I'll make it to be from the top 40% far away. Here inside the tags, we'll store actually the item.name. I'm going to need another input to be invisible, which will be the price ID, since we don't want the user to see it. So the name will be price ID, and the value will be item.priceID. And at the end, just need an input for the button. So input, give it a class of button dark, of type submit, and the value what we want to be displayed in the button will be checkout. For the styling, we want the button to be, we'll give it a position of absolute, so that we can place it, so to say, from the top 60%. So it is a bit below what we had here, the image title. Okay, this is a single tag as well. So this is the styling. This is actually up to you, but just the way I want to do it. Let me just, okay, so I will go to program.cs and put the default controller to be payment, so that each time I run the application, will be redirected to that page. Let me just run to check. Okay, so we see here, we have the first image, the second one, and the third one. And I'll style them a bit different actually. But what did I do wrongly here in the second image? The Jordan t-shirt is not displayed. Let me just, I think, probably just got a false URL. Copy image address. Just run the program one more time. So probably it's not updated yet what we inputted to the database, but anyway, I'm just gonna play around also now. I think I'll see it a bit later. I'll play around a bit with the styling so it looks better. So just something small. I'll give here a class of item so that I can access it in the style.css file. And then I'm gonna want to give a class also to the title here, to the header. So class item title, and to the button as well, item button. Okay, so if what did I do here? If I go to this www root to CSS folder, site.css, so I'll make the item and item button. So I'm accessing these two items. And I'll set the opacity to basically the display to 0. So at first we won't see the title and the button, but as soon as we will hover over them with the mouse, we will see them. Just a bit of feature. I actually want to play around with CSS in each project I make, but yeah, it doesn't really matter, just for the aesthetic part of it. Dot item so we want, so as soon as we hover over the item, so the whole div, we want to access this item title, and the same thing is for the item button. So as soon as we hover over the item, we will access these two, the title and the button. We'll change the opacity to be 0.4. Let me just run the program again. We'll wait for it to load. Okay, so we see that, okay, not exactly what I wanted. Let me see what I did wrong here. Okay, so actually I wanted to set the opacity of these to 1 when you hover over the item. I actually wanted to make the image itself a bit disappear. So item hover, item image, okay, I don't know if I gave a class to the image actually. Image, class of, no I didn't, item image, I want to make the opacity of the image to be 0.4, and yeah, this should actually do it now. Okay, so that's actually what all I want to do. So here, as soon as we hover over it, we can see the button and the title, and the background is a bit blurred or so. That's it. I will fix it a bit later. I think maybe if I just refresh the database, it should work. But yeah, anyway, I'm just going over to the index, to the payment method actually here. And the last thing I'm gonna need to do here is to take from the form the product here. We'll use this bind tag here. We'll bind the ID, the name, the image URL, and the price ID to the model, to the method here. So we'll specify here that we're taking an item. I'll name it item, actually after the square bracket here, and we'll take it in our method, and here we'll specify, we'll take the price ID. So basically just need to write here this to access this price ID with this string interpolation. So inside curly braces, I just need to access item dot price ID, and each time that we click on an item, we should create the checkout session with the specific price ID, and we should be redirected to this Stripe checkout session for this specific product. So if I run the project one last time here, I should just refresh the database. I don't know what the problem was with the second image, but now it seems to work. And here we have our items, and if I click checkout on the first one, for example, we should be redirected to the checkout session for this specific item. We see here the name, the price, and the item also. Let me just go back here, click on the third one. Should be redirected to this one, which I hadn't created with an image in my Stripe account. Let me just check this second one as well. So we should be redirected to the second product that we created actually. For this one, for $25, I'm just trying this one last time. It's 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. Just some name and some data, a date in the future, just a number here, a name, click on pay. And the payment should also be successful, as we can see. Thanks so much for watching. I mean, I know this took a bit longer than I thought it would, but I hope you didn't get messed up in the way, and I hope you understood a few things. Don't forget to subscribe or like the video if you haven't done already, and I will see you guys in the next video.